Hi Danielle, this is Instructor Toll, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on your Project 1 draft. And I think this is an outstanding start. I think the information you have here is excellent. I really enjoyed reading this piece. Though I'm not your intended audience, I learned a lot about agricultural practices and how they affect the environment. So I think the research you've done here is outstanding. You've got a lot of great secondary sources. You do a really nice job of supporting specific claims with evidence. I think that you're doing a nice job of kind of addressing multiple aspects of these agricultural practices, multiple aspects of the problem here, kind of breaking this down by specific area, right? Even though these problems are kind of interrelated, used in conjunction with one another. I think that you're doing a really nice job of kind of breaking down some complex issues for your audience, right? And I think you've done an outstanding job of choosing a genre and addressing a specific audience. So your audience is very, very clear. It's a specific person. I think a formal letter is a great choice here. You do an outstanding job of establishing an ethos. I think talking about your experience and your connection to this issue is really important up front. And so you're really doing a nice job of using those conventions of the letter genre here to communicate your specific claims and the problem in general. So I really appreciate all of your hard work thinking about this issue. It's clear you put a lot of work into this. But I do have a couple of questions and suggestions for you as you proceed. And again, I think that, in terms of the analysis and the evidence, there's not a lot that's needed in terms of addition here. I did have a question here, though. I did wonder how prevalent is crop burning in the area. I think if you can find that evidence, just give a general overview. Maybe talking about how widespread the usage of that practice is in the Yuma area would be really important. And that's an opportunity to make a comparison perhaps with other areas. So for example, if there's another agricultural area, maybe Central Valley of California or in Washington or somewhere else that uses different practices, I wonder if you could make that comparison. That would just even strengthen your argument further, I think. I did want to see the video cited here. I think that it's appropriate to include this video, especially if this is going to be an e-letter. And I like the way that you explain it, but you will need the APA style and text citation here. So, the researcher or the audience will know where it comes from. I thought this was a particularly great piece of evidence. A recent health alert warned the public to stay indoors. I think this really centers on the local effects of the problem, and I'm glad that you included that here. I thought that was great, actually. Another number of issues here that you want to take care of in relation to drop quotes. So this is a dropped quote, and it's a quote that's completely disconnected from your own language. Remember that anytime that you introduce a quote, you want to use a signal phrase, a complete sentence with a colon, or incorporate the quote into your own sentence. And just a couple of examples of that. This is that Purdue OWL site that I have talked about on the announcements page. And as you see here, these are signal phrases. And I think that you understand how to use this, right? But these are different ways of setting up quotes. Signal phrase, incorporating it into your own syntax, a complete sentence and a colon. These are three common ways to incorporate those quotes. But dropping quotes in is kind of jarring for the audience, and it helps to signal to your audience that, look, I'm going to use somebody else's language here. So connecting it to your own language and making that distinction clear is going to be important. There's another one here. So there are a number of examples of these dropped quotes here. One question I did have, and I don't know if this is a necessity or not, but I thought this was really powerful evidence here, talking about your personal experience with these adverse effects of poor agricultural practices. You have personally suffered from this, and your family members and neighbors have as well. And I think this might need to be something that's discussed earlier on in the piece, because I think it's such a powerful piece of evidence, and it's evidence that your audience will not have access to, right? This is your personal testimony, and obviously your audience is not going to be familiar with this, even though they might be to some extent familiar with some of these other facts that you have here. So I would recommend foregrounding this, perhaps moving some of that to the introduction here, and just even strengthen the introduction, and then perhaps referring to this again, reminding your audience that you've personally suffered or been affected by these particular issues, right? I just thought that was really important evidence. There were a couple of places where I thought some of the evidence that you had was a little bit old. So this quote is from 1993. Pesticides that are volatile have the greatest potential to go to the atmosphere and if persisting to move long distances. I do wonder if this is relevant, because I know that pesticide production has changed over the years. I know back in the 70s they were using pesticides that were later banned, right? And I wonder if regulations have changed so much since 1993 that some of this information is outdated. I don't know the answer to that question, but it would be worth investigating. And if you could find more up-to-date research that basically says the same thing, I think that would be more helpful for establishing ethos and the credibility of your sources here. You did ask in your email about visual evidence, perhaps charts and graphs and maps, things like that. I think that would be great to include here. In an email like this, an e-letter, I think it would be appropriate to include them as an appendix. I think you're right that the letter genre doesn't really readily incorporate photos in the midst of the letter. I think but including them at the end and perhaps referring to them in the text saying like, see appendix figure 1, right? And including them all at the end of the email after your references. I think that would be a great way to incorporate images. So again, I think the answer is yes. I think that there's a different practice of incorporating images. I think that's more appropriate for a formal letter, even if it's an e-letter like this. All right. So again, I think this is an outstanding start. I think this is great research. I really like how seriously you're approaching this issue and how carefully that you're discussing things here. And I look forward to seeing your final draft. If you have any questions about my feedback or questions about the assignment in general, please let me know. Thank you.